Hello, hello, hello. You're listening to Under the Sun with Tony Iman, which is me. Hi, how are you? I hope you're either being relaxed or productive. I hope that the past week has been good. And yeah, welcome back if you're listening for the how many ever it is episodes that this is. I think this is like the seventh episode. I'm not exactly sure. I actually check on that. But I just know that I have fallen into the routine of recording the podcast. And I'm really, really trying my hardest here to be consistent and to continue to show up for you guys and for myself while doing this. Happy new month. It's March. And this is the first podcast of the month. Now, honestly, depending on how this month goes, we might get 3 episodes or 2 episodes rather than the 4 in the weekly ones. We might get like more of a bi-weekly situation. I'll keep you guys updated, probably with socials, if that's gonna happen, or you might just get a really, really short episode, but that's okay. And the reason why I'm thinking about that is because I do have midterms coming up. I'm recording this on a Sunday evening, and I really need to lock in, guys. And so I'm doing everything in my power to balance all the things that is taking my attention and still trying to portray and achieve excellence in all those things. And while the podcast is also something that I'm definitely prioritizing more than I have ever done before, I also do think that with different, facets of life, there's kind of like a give and take. And we might get to a season where I might need to take a step back to focus on the things that need my, like, most of my attention in that season. So like I said, I'll keep you guys updated. But yeah, I'm so happy to be back. I cannot believe it's March. It's the third month of the year and the last month in my first quarter plan. I already know that this is going to be a packed month for me because my calendar is filling up really quickly. Like the next weekend and this week already, there's just so much on my plate. That is kind of nerve wracking, but also really exciting because I know they're going to fill my cup in some way. And so I'm looking forward to all these things and just reflecting on the past week. I had a really great week, guys. I was able to talk with a friend that haven't spoken to in a while and get through school. And also, I had multiple opportunities to share my faith this past week, especially today. We had our campus service, and what that means is like we have a ministry called the campus ministry in our church, where it's really just the youth. So think of college kids, people who are, of college age, just young adults living life, trying to love others like Jesus and trying to strive to be like him. And we basically took over church today. We ran the service from top to bottom. I had the honor of sharing my story and how I came to Jesus, really emphasizing the power of prayer and his unconditional love, because it is through that I am saved, and and Jesus' sacrifice for me on the cross. And I was able to share that with people. And I also had the immense privilege of singing a song and leading. And it was just such a surreal experience for me. I was so nervous, and it turned out beautifully. I am so proud of my friends, and I'm so proud of our church for the way that we're able to put our talents and serve God, and also the way we're able to encourage one another. It was such a beautiful service, and I learned so much from my peers. And I also just learned a lot about myself, and understood that, like, with God everything is possible. With God I can do anything, and when I'm putting my energy towards him, I cannot fail. And so that was definitely my peak. If you can't even tell, I'm still buzzing from that excitement. I'm still floating off of it. It was such an amazing time, and it really emphasized to me my support system, because there were so many things that I wouldn't have been able to do if not for the people who were cheering me on and supporting me and answering all of my stupid questions along the way, and really doing their best to make me feel prepared and, equipped and empowered to, go through every single session like I needed to. So yeah, it was a really, really fun time. And honestly, I hope that in this podcast we'll probably have an episode where I delve more into my faith journey and how I've been able to come to know Jesus for myself, and what that really looks like as a young adult still trying to figure it out. It's really daunting, but I'm not necessarily scared, or at least even if I am scared, I'm not apprehensive. because I know that God is with me and that he's going to lead me where I need to go. I'm not necessarily um shaking at the prospect of growing up. I just don't want to grow up, period. I think, children, to be a child is a beautiful thing, and it's honestly way easier. But this is the circle of life. You grow up, you grow old, and you die, and all that fun stuff. But it's, these days I look forward to it with a little bit more joy because of Jesus. I would say was my pit this week was just the fact that the week went by so quickly. I had so many things that I was trying to accomplish, and it really felt like I was moving a mile a minute. And there's some things where I'm like, I don't think I fully was able to take in that moment. Funny story, quick story time. So I actually thought that I had my appointment for senior portraits this past week, and the most hilarious thing happened. So in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I don't have enough time. I have senior portraits. I just came back from a class. I need to get ready. And right after senior portraits, I have a class that I need to get to. I haven't had breakfast. I hadn't had lunch. Like at this point, it was getting to like lunchtime. Like we're talking 12:30 p.m. And I've been awake since 7:30. No, I've been awake since 7 actually. And so I've been up really early. I haven't had a stick of anything to eat. And I had already done 2 workouts because I went running and then I went straight to swimming. And then I was like, okay, now I got my other class. So I'm racing to get ready. And I finally get ready. I look presentable enough. And then I walk over, matter of fact, speed walk over to the venue where this thing was supposed to take place. And I walk in there and there's no one there. And I'm kind of like, oh, what's happening? Like, why isn't there anyone there? Like, this is so uncommon. I don't think this should be happening. And then I march. You would think that like, Iman, there's no one there, so maybe it's just not happening. Maybe you got the date wrong. Maybe I would reread the email and make sure that my scheduled appointment is actually for that day. But I'm in my head and I'm like, no, I'm on my Zoom. My calendar says it's today, which means it's today. Yeah, you got to be very careful with the calendar. My calendar runs my life. And honestly, I look at it as one of the greatest joys. But if you put something wrong in your calendar, it can actually destabilize your day. And so long story short, I walk over to the dean's office and I'm like, hey, I have an appointment. They were charging me for X, Y, and Z, and they didn't show up. What's going on? And I'm like, I don't know where it is. Was it moved? All that fun stuff. And then this poor receptionist lady, like she's looking through emails and I'm probably should just kind of figure out, oh, what is this kid talking about? And why is it that these people aren't here? And then somebody else, comes in and steps in and asks like, oh, are you, what was your question? And I tell her senior portraits and she's like, oh, are you sure? I could have sworn that everything is scheduled for March. And I'm like, no, my appointment is today. And she's like, can I see the email? And so I pull up the email and lo and behold, it is in March. My appointment is scheduled for March. And that was the first time, guys, I kid you not, that was the first time it ever registered in my brain that my appointment was for March. And I don't know if it's because, like I said, time just seems really fleeting, or at least felt quite fleeting this past week, or just my scattered brainness, or maybe just, an honest mistake on my part. But I honestly didn't know that I had scheduled it for March. In my head, and for all intents and purposes, I was like, I need to go get this thing done today because that's when it's scheduled for. And it just so happens that I was wrong. And it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Like I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me, because you don't understand. Like I marched into that office with a purpose, like feeling all self-righteous and defensive and like, this is what happened and this is what these people did. They didn't show up and I've, lost my class time. I've lost my breakfast time. I'm just like not okay. But I'm here because I said I would be and they're not here. And it turns out that I was wrong. So that was like a very funny, not really pit moment, but just part of the things that made me feel like, wow, like time is really flying by and I cannot get a handle on it and I need to lock in. But all in all, it was a pretty productive week. And so now moving into this week, is still, like I said, a lot of reflection happening and a lot of moving parts. But something that honestly still stuck with me despite how hectic and fleeting the week was is self-awareness and what that looks like. Now, this was really something that I started pondering after a conversation that I had, or like I mentioned earlier, with a friend that I hadn't spoken to in a while. We sort of became really distant. We were once really close and then we became distant, and it was hard to figure out why. For the longest time, I really couldn't put my finger on why there was that disconnect. And I think that's really common in a lot of friendship, especially as people grow up. Like, you start to feel distant, you start to pull away, or the other person starts to pull away from you, and you may not always know the reason why. And when we came together to catch up and to figure out, hey, like, it's been a minute, what's been happening? It dawned on me while during our conversation that I lack self-awareness sometimes, especially within that friendship. And it got me thinking, what is self-awareness, and what does it look like to be self-aware in a friendship or in any relationship, and what is my approach and how can I do better? So the textbook definition of self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand your own thoughts, feelings, and behavior. It also involves understanding how others perceive you. Now, that is honestly such a it's such a big thing, and I feel like at first people think about self-awareness being related to introspection, but there's a lot of different parts to what constitutes a self-aware person. And it's become like a buzzword, like, oh, you're not self-aware, or this person's super self-aware. And it suggests that if someone is self-aware, that they're more confident and they're able to build stronger relationships and they're able to communicate more effectively, that they're just able to move within the world with a manner of ease that, you know, is not necessarily given to a lot of different people, or just the vast majority of people. I was reading an article in the Harvard Business Review about I was reading an article in the Harvard Business Review about self-awareness, the emotional intelligence section, what self-awareness really is and how to cultivate it. And it mentioned that, in the studies, there are two broad categories of self-awareness that kept on coming up. And so the first, they dubbed it internal self-awareness, which represents how clearly we see our own values, our passions, aspirations, our fit with our environment, our reactions, including, our thoughts, our feelings, and also our impact on others. And then the second category is external self-awareness, which means the ability to understand how other people view you. Also, and it mentioned the fact that, like, a lot of people think that if you're really internally self-aware, then you're also really externally self-aware, but that's not necessarily true. And I know this by experience because I realized that I'm kind of lacking on both fronts, but it's also in a specific facet of my life. I think that when it comes to things that I'm good at, like my strengths, and when it comes to like projects and work and things of that nature, when it comes to things that I have to achieve in, I'm very self-aware. I know where my boundaries are for the most part. I know what will push my boundaries, but I can probably make work. And I know the things that I am absolutely not skilled at and I need help in. But when it comes to social self-awareness and when it comes to relationships, I am not the most self-aware person on the planet. And I used to think that I was, and I used to think that I, understand everything I am, and that I had a strong sense of self. But again, that's what growing is for. If you've listened to any previous episodes of this podcast, you know that I always say that self-development and growth is not a linear path. It's something that yo-yos, and we grow and we change as we grow older. And maybe teenage me was super self-aware, but young adult me is now realizing that I'm still getting to know myself. And I was talking to this friend, and they were telling me about all the things that I had done wrong in that friendship and how it impacted them. And I realized, I mean, one, it was kind of difficult to hear because I was not aware that I had done, things to really, make this person feel a certain way. But not only that was I like hearing all these things, I also struggled to kind of see their own perspective of what it is that we were talking about. I was just kind of like, but that's your, like, that's how you feel. That's not necessarily how I am. Like, and also internally, I was like, I didn't know this about myself. Like, I didn't know that people could possibly see me this way. And I was having a conversation with my mom about this, and she was breaking down things that she's noticed that other people perceive about me, or that she's perceived about me personally, that I had never thought of. And it also taught me that, like, when it comes to internal and external self-awareness, one shouldn't take precedence over the other. Like, we all should be actively working on being able to see ourselves fully for who we are, and also be able to understand how other people might be observing us and taking us in. And so I was really, it was a very humbling conversation, to say the very least, but it was also extremely eye-opening, because it opened me up to this new way of thinking about my sense of self and my self-awareness, and and like a new level of emotional intelligence that I just wasn't dialed into. And so I've taken a few things away when it comes to, like, building that self-awareness. A way to figure out your self-awareness is to have conversations with the people who are most close to you and can communicate to you who you are, and communicate with you honestly, without, bias, without sycophancy, but really just be honest with you about who you are. And over this past week, that's something that I have taken the opportunity to try and do, to communicate with my friends and to ask them, like, hey, what is it about myself that you think I should know that I may be unaware of? I actually stole that question from the game We Are Not Really Strangers. Again, amazing game. And there's deep level 3, which is one of introspection and reflection. And it encourages you to look back on a conversation, or just look back on life in general and that relationship, and ask questions to that end. And that's a question that came up while I was playing it with with some friends, and it's a question that has stuck with me, because I think it really lends itself to self-awareness. And the people around you are really the fairest people to talk to you about external self, like, awareness, because you can't really invent your own perception of others, of you. You have to ask the people who are perceiving you, and the people who you are um interacting with on a daily basis, for you to get, like, a tangible, unbiased answer. Another way to develop that self-awareness is to journal, to write down your thoughts and feelings, write down how you're reacting to something, write down the way you process information, and reflect on how that action, like, aligns with who you are, or who you would try to be. And also, like, be curious, explore the past, and try to let go of judgment. And this is something I got from the internet, like, that specific sentence: explore your past and try to let go of judgment. And I really think that means that, instead of looking back on yourself as like, wow, I used to be like this, and that's crazy, and X, Y, and Z and the third, one should be able to take away from their past selves a better version, or an inspiration for a better version of who they're trying to be. And that's a lot of what the internal self-awareness, what that work looks like, is digging deep and trying to figure out, where is it that I have failings? Where is it that I have, fought in the past and overcome? Or what is it that I've had since I was a child that I'm still struggling with? And try to let go of whatever stigma you might have around that, and try to push forward. Another way to develop self-awareness, and just overall emotional intelligence, is to be able to listen, be a good listener. Even the Bible says it, like, listening is better than talking, because you're able to pay attention to others, to observe their reactions, and to ultimately pick up on the cues that you need in order for you to communicate with them effectively. With this friend that I had this conversation with, we talked about the fact that I wasn't very accommodating, and I was completely unaware of the fact that this person is going above and beyond, or, like, inconveniencing themselves just to cater to me, because they care about me and because we're friends. In my head, I'm also just like, this person must want to do exactly what I want to do, because they're not saying no outrightly. But we also know that no can manifest in different ways. And so it's important for us to be able to actively listen and engage with everyone, in order to observe their reactions accurately. Now, this is not to say that you need to become this super self-conscious human who doesn't know how to interact with others, but it's just important for us to think of think outside of ourselves. We have to interact with people, and we need people in order to move forward and to make money and to continue to push forward. So it's really time for us to be honest with ourselves and really do the work to become better, more self-aware people. Another thing that I will also highly recommend is being able to take responsibility. That was also something that I was struggling with in our conversation that I eventually, started to do towards the end of it, is just taking responsibility for your moods, for your actions, for the way that you are coming off of and how that might potentially translate. And you'd find that when you take responsibility for a possible lack of judgment, you are able to handle conflict more maturely, and you're able to just resolve issues with less drama than you might have been able to in the past, because you recognize when you're being um provoked, or you recognize what ticks you off, and you kind of take a step back and do whatever you need to do to deal. And you're also able to recognize boundaries and to be your best authentic self regardless, and to be able to be vulnerable. That was also a big theme of my past week, is just vulnerability, being able to show up fully as me without holding back, talking about the things that are important to me, but also holding space for other people to do the same, and being an active listener. So all in all, like looking back, like I said, it was such an eye-opening conversation. I was thinking about things that I'd never thought before. I was ruminating on different pieces of the conversation, and that, even though if you're talking to somebody and you're just like, hey, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing or how I'm showing up here, it doesn't hurt to ask. If someone really cares for you or is invested in your future, they will do their best to tell you the truth. And if that's something that they've noticed, then it might be worth looking into with a critical eye. So I encourage you all to take this next week to think about, what are the things that you might be lacking in, and what are the ways that you want to strive to be more self-aware. I also challenge you to ask the people around you, or the people close to you, the people closest to you, what is it about me that I need to know, or that you think I need to know, that I may be unaware of. It's a great prompt. I want to see you guys's reflections. If you have any stories to share about a time where you were confronted about, self-awareness and emotional intelligence, or the lack of thereof, I would love for you to share in the comments. If you're listening on Spotify, leave a review. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen to podcasts, leave a 5-star rating, or 4, but 5 is preferable and appreciated. And also tune in to Instagram, and you can find me at I am Tony Iman. I might just put up a random question box for us to drop your stories, and also just share with me by DM what you've been feeling, and how you're planning on processing that. And so that's kind of where I'm at. It was a really amazing conversation because it really put things in perspective for me. And now I'm thinking of all the ways that I want to improve and just grow, especially with the things that were discussed in that particular moment. Thank you guys so much for listening. I also want to share really randomly this thing that I found. It was like a post on Instagram by this account named Zach Zach Pogrob. And it talks about like the beauty of routine. And I know this isn't necessarily related to anything we were just talking about, but I really loved it. And as someone who thrives on a good routine and is very attached to that like repetitive aspect of living life, I thought this was very well put, very eloquent, and I thought I'd share. And it goes as follows. It says, monotony has beauty. It's rare to do the same thing forever, but when you do, the details come alive. You fall in love with the same food, the same places, the same people, the same routine, the same habits, the same passions. They start to mean more than you ever thought they could. Compounding is the engine of greatness, and when you do one thing 1% better, it evolves faster than you're ever realizing. Everything worth doing is worth overdoing. Every day is easier than some, and consistency and routine can be the source of relentless creativity. put effort in to make rituals feel effortless. Then let time do what time does. I think that's a really powerful perspective on routine and also just like repeating things and repetition and being able to strive towards something. So, whatever season that you're at in right now, I hope that this word kind of resonates and it brings you comfort and maybe just helps you understand the people in your life who are very type A and appreciate routines more than anything else. I hope to see you back here next week. If not the week after, I will keep you posted. And thank you so much again for letting me into your ears today. Have a wonderful week ahead. Bye.